Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Managing the Perfect Career Storm. We are live streaming onto Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we will give it a couple of seconds for the platforms to catch up with the streaming. So there are no delays. If at any point you have questions, post them in the comment section, and we'll be taking the questions right away during the webinar or at the very end during the Q&A part of today. With me today is Professor Rikard Larsson. I'd like to introduce him and actually ask him to introduce himself.
Thank you. Well, my name is Rikard Larsson. I am a professor at Lund University in business administration. I'm also the co-founder of Decision Dynamics, and we might even talk a little bit more about the Decision Dynamics straight away, or
let's do that.
Then there is my pointer. So Decision Dynamics have been the provider of a more engaging talent solutions for many years. We are research-based, so we have been able to publish in Harvard Business Review and Academy of Management, and we have a global network where we are serving many big companies across the world. So that's a little bit about us.
Then I'll introduce Career Angels. My name is Sandra Bichl. I founded Career Angels in 2010. We are a data-driven consulting boutique that works around and consults around career management, job search, improving recruitment processes and employer branding. And I checked just before today, in the last years, we have supported almost 9,000 professionals on a one-on-one basis, so individually. And in the last 3 years, we've trained almost 8,000 people. And I like joking about it, for not being a training company, that's pretty many people that we have managed to train in the last 3 years. So, Rikard, the Great Resignation, does it exist? What is it?
Well, I definitely think it exists, even though it's different in different countries. It develops with different timing and so on. But we have actually like to compare it to somewhat of a perfect career storm, because already several decades ago, we started to change jobs more often, and that has been a trend that has been continuing. We also have this is partly driven actually by the digital transformation that has also been going on for several decades. And with that transformation, there is reason to change jobs more often. And more recently, we have been exposed to the pandemic and all the possible disappointments that can create. And we have also had a much greater reflection window. At least in Sweden, I'm not sure about the global correlations, but in Sweden, it's enough to just have some reflection windows of a couple of weeks during summer vacation or Christmas, New Year's vacation for both job exits to increase and divorces to increase. And if we go from a couple of weeks to having more than a year to reflect more if this is really what we like the most in our working life, that has also contributed. And with more resignation, there is a sudden increase in demand for jobs. So suddenly there are more alternatives. So this becomes a self-feeding, and of course that is also driven by the increased digital transformation that developed. Probably what normally would have taken 5 to 10 years has just in 2 years become much more digital. So there are many reasons why this is happening.
Well, one thing that I know the phenomenon exists, and I mean, we are a career consulting boutique, so we know how many people are quitting. But one thing that I'm not a big fan of is the word of Great Resignation, because it kind of implies to resign, to quit, to give up. Now, McKinsey in the report call it the great attrition. And there is another term called a good alternative to the great resignation, which is the great upgrade. And it was actually coined by White House economists in the US, because when you look at it, people are not quitting for the sake of quitting, leaving the job market. Unemployment levels are actually going down overall worldwide, in the States, in Europe. So what happens is, yes, people are quitting, but they're exchanging their jobs for better jobs, for early retirement, for setting up their business they've always wanted to do. So I know that the Great Resignation is attractive as a media word to sell employers on it. But from my perspective, I'm much rather like looking at it as, and I think even the word, the great upgrade is a better word. But the media has picked up the Great Resignation, so we know what we're talking about in that sense.
Yeah, and I would never want to stop with the Great Resignation. As this slide says, it's from the Great Resignation to what? So let's talk about to what, and as a tool for understanding that there can be different to whats, because there isn't one single destination. We should look at 4 different ways of looking at your working life. What is a successful career or successful working life? And they differ in terms of the direction and how long you like to stay. And the expert career concept or career orientation is someone who specializes in a specific area for as long as possible to become as good as possible. They identify with this choice. So if somebody asks an expert, who are they often answer with their professional choice. Being an engineer or a teacher doesn't have to be high-tech or academic. It can be any profession that you like to specialize to become as good as possible for as long as possible. So if the experts are their career, the linear make their career. And you make a linear career by climbing upwards towards higher managerial positions. And the more people that are reporting to you directly or indirectly, the more successful. And these are the 2 traditional ways of looking at career development. But there are actually at least 2 more. And the the spiral career is something you discover rather than being or making. And that's you go out with an expectations of perhaps being an expert or making a linear career. But after 5 to 6 years, motivation drops and you're wondering what you're doing as you're looking at yourself at the bathroom mirror in the morning. And people around you are even more surprised. I mean, what's wrong? You have a great job, but there is something missing, and it can take a long time before you realize what you're missing. And you go, okay, I was a little bit wrong, but now I'm in the right place. But give it 5, 6 more years, motivation goes down again. But this time perhaps you can look a bit quicker at what's missing. And once you get another, you go, what if I do this for 5 years and then something else for 5 years and then something else for 5 years? Wouldn't that be a great career? But it can take 20 years to discover that you should change every 5 years, because this is not what we typically teach people at universities, for instance. I myself is more of a spiral. I started just wanting to do research, but then when I was allowed to teach on my research, then I taught more, and now I've been working part-time consulting, and actually now it's up to 80% outside of the university. So that is but you take the research together with the teaching and transfer it to the practical world. Whoops, that was one too many. And finally, we have the transitory, that changes as often as possible to as different things as possible. Here I usually tell the story of my favorite transitory, which was a woman that came up to me after a presentation and said, I must be a transitory. I worked both in heaven and hell. And that's referring to working in a church and working in the engine room of a freight ship. And when I presented that to a religious organization in Stockholm, there was 3 priests in the audience, and one of the priests raised their hand and wondered which was heaven and which one was hell. And so sometimes not even the church might be the best place to work. She also worked in... Yes?
Oh, sorry. I've finished the sentence, please.
Well, I mean, she also worked in retail, in media, education, manufacturing. She was offered early retirement because of a back injury, and she approached it. She took heavy truck driver's license and became a truck driver. And most recently, which I don't know is the most recently any longer, but her son called her up on a Friday evening and said, Mom, there's a management position up and down here. You've never been a manager before. Wouldn't that be fun? So over the deadline is on Monday. So over a weekend, she decides to apply to a new job in a new city, in a new organization, in a new industry. 2 interviews later, she got it. So over a period of 20 years, she had 10 different jobs that had nothing in common. And the only time she stayed longer than 2 years was either when she had a baby or when she was in divorce. And it wasn't that she was unlucky or incompetent. All her employers wanted to keep her, but she wanted to change as often as possible. There you go with the 4 different career concepts that this model is built on.
Most of the people tuning in today probably see this for the first time. Could you share where the concepts come from? How come that some choose to introduce themselves as Professor Larsson and some say, hey, I want to change every 2 years?
Well, I mean, these are not written in any stones. It's not part of your personality. This is something that you learn, and often you learn what other people think is the ideal one. So that's one part. The research originated from the US in the late 70s, and I was exposed to it in mid 80s, and that has been the model that I've been working most with for 30 years. So it's a very exciting model, and let me show you some more of it, because it's not only 4 paths or patterns, it's also 4 ways of looking at each other. So if we take on the expert spectacles and look at another expert, we see someone who's serious, but also wrong, because we are more right. And there is a linear boss who thinks that he often knows more than he actually does. And then spirals, they like stamina and focus when they go off sideways. And the worst of all, according to the expert, is the transitory. There's an expression, jack of all trades, master of none. There is no experience, just change. Switch spectacles and take on the linear, and you look at an expert, you see someone who's good, but a problem, because they don't like to change. They ask difficult questions, and when you promote the best one, they say no, the ungrateful bastard. So that's not so good. Linear, looking at another linear, see someone who's goal-oriented, but it could also be a competitor, or trying to take my position, or even jump above me. And the ones who want to go sideways instead of upward must have a faulty compass. Don't you know which way is up? And the transitory has a hopeless CV. You can't become a manager with that kind of, at least you couldn't become a manager before. Switch spectacles again. Spiral, looking at an expert, see one who's overly specialized, and they see a linear, that someone sacrificed their personal development for the sake of their career. That doesn't sound so good. And then the first, really positive, a spiral discovering another spiral and telling their spiral story. And that sounds really interesting. I could do that. But just jumping to the next job without making use of the experience, that isn't that pretty wasteful, those transitories? And then finally, transitories would have to view the expert as rigid and narrow-minded, and linear as conventional careerist, and that's not very exciting. Spiral is rather flexible, but too careful to take those wide jumps. But if they happen to bump into another transitory, man, I was a free-spirited person. So this is one of the more popular slides that we have, and it has some humor and some recognition. But the key point is, out of 16 combinations, there are only 2 that are really positive: a spiral discovering another spiral and a transitory bumping into another one. All the other 14 combinations have dirt on their spectacles. They don't see the talents; they see the problems with the diversity in that sense. So
Which then influences how we manage people, how we recruit people, how we think about our own careers.
How we trust people. Because it's not only that I don't misunderstand you, I can't trust you because you do it in a different from my expectations. And then we also have 38 questions that you can answer to get your career profile. Because we don't put you in just in a box. We measure all 4 career orientations with the blue bars. So the higher the blue bar, the more ideal you think that career is. So Sandra, and not you, but another Sandra Sample, she has a linear ideal. She wants to climb upwards. She can also broaden herself spirally, but she also have 2 nightmares that she didn't want to get stuck as in a cave as an expert, or jumping around with a hopeless CV as a transitory. But then we also measure the underlying career motives, and in Sandra's case, there is a perfect match. So she has the closest you can get to the best career self-awareness or self-insights. But that's
so the career concept, as you said, is influenced by external factors like what we think we should be doing, and the career motives is what we actually want to be doing, correct?
Yeah, but what actually engages us our most, but this kind of correspondence between the head of the blue bars and the heart of the red bars is very rare. It isn't 1% that has this kind of correspondence. So let's look at another profile, Joe. Now, if Joe was promoted, would he accept? Yes, he would, because he hears the promotion, he sees the promotion, he thinks about the promotion, and he will answer yes, because he dreams as much of climbing upwards as Sandra does. But 6 months later, will he be a happy manager? No. Joe, when you had your fun at work lately? That was when I was specializing on this molecule here. Have you been able to do that since you became a manager? No, I've just been administrating other people. So why did you idealize climbing upwards? Well, I guess I'm making a career on other people's terms. I didn't ask my heart. So there are these gaps, but misdirection towards the ideals of others, or motivation potential when the red bar is much higher than the blue bar, and luckily that's more common.
So from a recruitment or managerial perspective, it would be important to understand if I promote the best technical person as opposed to the best manager.
Yeah, it's so often to promote people to their level of incompetence, or with the career model to their level of demotivation when it's no longer fun. And Joe is a prime candidate for that. And these blue bars are often influenced by our national culture. So in the US, for instance, 50% have the linear as their highest blue bar. In Sweden, it's 55% has a spiral as the highest blue bar. And in Germany, the expert blue bar is higher. So we see correlations with Hofstede's different national cultures and so on. But the one thing that is going across nations is the fact, it seems like, that about 60% of us have a blue bar that what we think ought to be the ideal career that is different from the highest red bar. So 60% of us are actually pursuing a career that wouldn't be the most engaging for us. That's a terrible waste of motives of engagement. That starts with our own ignorance, basically, and this can easily be dealt with by answering these 38 questions. Okay, so that's the three slides that describes the career model, the core of the career model. And how does that then apply to the perfect career storm that we are talking about as a theme today? Well, we can see how some don't like much career uncertainty, like experts. Some love career uncertainty, like transitory, and that kind of thing influences whether we like to change tasks or stick to the same tasks within the same job, or we like to change jobs, such as job rotation. We can change jobs inside a team, or we can even change teams, like internal mobility in larger organizations, or we can even change the whole organization. But that when we resign, we typically are thinking that we are leaving the organization, but there are so many ways that we can actually create change without doing that. So to not make the big mistakes that it's Great Resignation, we all have to become transitories, so we can leave all those other motives behind, is a terrible waste. So think about job sculpting, where you change some of the tasks, not the whole job, or job rotation, where you do change jobs within a team, or internal mobility. Those are three ways that can better suit our different levels of career uncertainty before you change the whole organization. We like to phrase it like it's better to change jobs more right, not necessarily more often. So that's one application of this career model in this perfect career storm.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to managing uncertainty, job sculpting, job rotation, internal mobility is the way to go. Whenever somebody comes to us and says, well, I want to change my job, the first question we ask is why? Because change might not be the answer. I was approached yesterday with a request to do a webinar for a group of female executives, because the person who had prepared the program said, I don't feel comfortable talking about the traditional approach to careers anymore in today's uncertain times. So Sandra, could you please, does it even make sense to plan careers? Can you plan careers effectively as you could 10 years ago? And how can you manage that uncertainty? And that's a very valid question, especially for those more on the left side, meaning experts linear that don't necessarily strive for change, but that also means that they want to avoid change. They want to feel safe and secure. So what can you do about that? So for those who are listening today, a couple of tips. If you suspect that you're more on the left side of that spectrum, so expert linear, is also to understand, first understand your own concepts and motives. It might be that you surprise yourself with what kind of motives you actually have. As Rikard said before, 60% might get surprised by the actual results. It's good to be up to date with the job market. In the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of professionals lost their jobs, so it wasn't their decision to quit. and or traded for something better. They lost their jobs because of the pandemic, and a lot of them in conversations with us said, I'm so frustrated, I can't find a job. Now, one thing that has happened is that the job market has changed so much in the last couple of years. So, in order to decrease that feeling of risk and uncertainty, it's good to be in touch with the job market to understand how things have changed, how the tools have changed. It's about taking charge of our own development to not only rely on organizations to train us in what they need, but to take charge and see what is needed in general in the job market in case something happens. So there are a lot of different things that we can do to maneuver uncertainty or decrease the level of perceived uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Please continue, Rikard.
Often development is considered something that you do with the person, like better self-insight or discover your strengths or improve some critical weaknesses. But we like to suggest that there is also another kind of development, which we call job development. Job sculpting is another concept for it, where you try to get more of those tasks that you find the most engaging and less of those disengaging tasks that most of us have. We always have some of the worst hours during a week. And if you can change those, then actually for more, then it can be easier to change tasks than changing you as a person. And so we ask people which seems more interesting, but the best is actually to do both. They don't exclude one another. They actually are done better together. If you understand more about yourself, you can also improve the job much more with greater precision. So this is a typical both-and solution that can increase our developmental opportunities. So that's one bit. And for those that are more interested in the career model, it can actually be applied not only to development, as Sandra, you said about it for selection purposes, for which kind of talent you attract, how you appraise them, how you retain them, what kind of rewards, both monetary and non-monetary rewards, and even exits can be helped with the career model, the next step, so to speak. So whether you're a manager or you're working in HR, there are some of these many possible applications that can be interesting for you to use the career model in. Or if you're a consultant or a coach, you can use it in those services that you provide to your client. And we offer a convenient and time-efficient online certification training. That the first one will actually start already on March 29th. In this
14 days.
Yeah, that's not but there are transitory people who are quicker than most. That can decide quickly. There are 3 live sessions that are 1 to 2 hour long, and then there are some recorded sessions and a training project. So you'll be certified in this by late April. So about less than a month, but only 14 active hours spread out over 3 or 4 weeks. If you like to discuss this further, you can contact me on LinkedIn or via email, rikard.larsson@decisiondynamics.se. You can also visit our website and learn more about this certification opportunity. Okay, so let's we have already begun our discussion, but there are some things that that you have also thought about this Great Resignation that you might want to add regarding is this something very temporary? That when you talk about the perfect storm, it happens just once in 100 years. But is this a once in 100-year thing?
No. The short answer is no. The long answer is no, because when you look at statistics, I just checked the report before now to make sure I got the numbers right. 60% of employers believe that the Great Resignation, upgrade, or attrition, however you want to call it, it will continue over the next 6 to 12 months at least. Now, when you also look at how the job market has shifted itself with the new tools, more will continue. You had that on the slide early on. People change jobs more often. The job market overall has become much more uncertain. There was a point probably about 3 or 4 years ago that I couldn't use the word VUCA anymore because of how often people used that word to describe the job market, that it's becoming volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I think especially in 2022, we can all agree that we are all living that VUCA environment of not knowing what will happen next, and that will continue because not all the companies have finished their digital transformation. Some of them haven't even started yet. The tools will continue, so definitely that's not a temporary thing that will pass. But what I would like to see is where it goes to. That's an interesting thing to see how it evolves and how quick companies adapt and candidates adapt to hopefully improved version of the job market and a much better awareness and acceptance of that diversity, as you mentioned. Only two positive views of others, and that should improve over time, to understand that everybody's different, everybody has different needs.
And it has improved, but it has improved slowly. But again, I think that out of this, the pandemic is supposed to perhaps even be over now, even though we don't know if there are more variations or what happens in the fall, or when there is a new pandemic. But what we have learned is that we can learn much faster than we have done before. We have learned more fast that we are different, even now when we're returning to work. Some will like to work more at home. Some will want to work more at the office. And we will not have a single solution for this. We are learning about diversity. We are learning that it makes sense for us to reflect on how our working life can be improved and not being stuck in existing solutions all the time. So we will be leaving the Great Resignation towards more diverse futures for many years, decades onwards. It's not going to get less VUCA, less change. So anyway, I like to say that it's not only that this is long term, but it's also extremely costly, and we have unfortunately a tendency of underestimating these costs. And that's partly because when we come from business administration or management, we think that accounting is the most important function in business administration. But if we look at the accounting that provides the visible cost when somebody leaves, you have some recruitment costs for the replacement, and you have some training costs for the replacement. But that's not anything big accounting wise. But this is a much too small view on what resignation of people actually cost. We have hidden costs that starts long before we actually resign. There is some kind of diminishing engagement, and when it continues the engagement, I start thinking, should I quit perhaps? And if things continue to get worse, I get to a point where yes, I will quit, but I will not tell the organization that immediately. I will talk to my family. I'll talk to my friends. I'll talk to a coach. I'll look for alternatives before I resign. And
Right
once that,
now, right now, according to the most recent data and studies on candidate engagement, 40% of respondents of an McKinsey study have declared that they want to leave in the next 6 months.
yeah, we're talking about more long things that precede the resignation, and then there is X number of months before you actually can leave, but the recruitment often takes longer than those months, so there will be an empty share or an empty place for X number of months, and just because you hire a replacement, it will often take some time before that replacement can start. So there is operational losses before the replacement is there, and once the replacement is there, the replacement have to learn all the things that the person who left had learned before them. So this actually then represents an iceberg of hidden costs that we typically don't guess. We can ask the audience how many months do you think are actually lost from an exit that you wanted to keep? And you may want to write your estimates in the chat if you like. In the meantime, I can tell you what I asked municipal CEOs and CFOs and CHROs, 51 of them in Sweden, what they thought was lost, and they answered between 2 and 18 months was the minimum and maximum time that they thought was lost. And on average, that was 7.4 months that these 51 persons, managers, guessed. But that is a strong underestimation. When we look at it in more detail at the whole iceberg, we arrive at somewhere between 1 to 3 years. And
we right now have a comment that says the estimate would be that there are 12 to 18 months of lost months,
which is much better guess, because it's we are talking about then 1.3 years, which is about twice what they asked. So just looking at this iceberg helps you make a more adequate guess. And by the way, this 1 to 3 years is still an underestimation, because it assumes that the person that you hired was the right one that can actually get up. We have, if you look at studies that not focusing on replacement, but actually recruitment choices, 30% of those are wrong. They will quit before they learn it, or they perhaps never learn as much as the previous one. So it's more adequate to guess somewhere between 1.5 and 4 years. But this doesn't show up in the accounting, so people don't believe it's this expensive. But this is something. It is. If we start actually understanding how valuable engagement is, we need to do that. Then what do you think we can do about this to reduce these costs? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, and I actually want to jump ahead and say we will discuss that in detail in our following webinars.
You definitely can. I mean, I wanted to at least flag the fact that we got to stop viewing an individual employee as just being a part of the organization. That's how we typically do. Oh, we have hundreds, we have perhaps even thousands, and yes, some quit, so we need to bring some in, but they are just small cogs in the big machine, so to speak. But the career perspective is a very healthy antidote to that, because it puts the person in the middle. And we suddenly realize that they're not just being part of a big organization. The organization is just being a part of the individual's career. And if we're going to engage these individuals, that is probably a more useful perspective to have. And guess what? Organizations tend to become smaller parts of the people's career as they resign more often.
One of our audience members, Kasia, says, better dialogue between individuals and organization is to me a key. And that's also when you look at the studies around the Great Resignation, there is this huge disconnect between what people want and what organizations think that employees want. And it's about the relationships rather than being seen as a transactional relationship. So
a pair of hands, or perhaps a small part of their brain or something.
Yes.
So that's something that we can carry on, and if we focus on a career perspective, we can also understand how to engage people more. And that's the topic of
that's what I want to say before.
Yeah. Sorry.
That was my slide that I thought was yeah. So what we want to do when we started talking about the Great Resignation a couple of weeks ago, Rikard and I said, well, it's not enough to just talk about the individual level, the career storm, how organizations fit into it, but we need to take it a step further and then translate it into engagement for retention and performance, because now we know there is a problem. It's a very costly problem, but we also want to show that there are solutions to it. So we'd like to invite everybody on April 5 for our second webinar, where we'll be discussing practical applications and how to think about engagement to retain and to increase and improve performance.
Because there isn't really any single factor that has so many positive effects for both individuals and organizations as engagement. So we're going to talk more about engagement and how we can understand it and increase retention, which will improve performance, but it will also improve performance in many different additional ways. So it's magic, basically. And
we also want to answer the question of what that means for the future of talent management. And here's another invitation to everybody joining here today and those who haven't been able to join yet, which is our third webinar called Make Talent Love Not War on May 25. To be fair, we picked that title a month ago.
Yeah. And I used to call it that it's the worst horrible metaphor that we have come up with in business administration, and Russia, Ukraine is making that point even much clearer. Yeah. It's not about being aggressively competitive for the talents who can pay the highest wages, or you can just rank and yank the worst performers to improve performance. That's a completely wrong mindset. Engagement comes from love, and so we need to approach talents in a much different way. So that will be the topic of our last co-webinar. Before the summer.
Well, don't say last, exactly, before the summer.
the last in this series.
Exactly, and on time, fitting within the 45 minutes that we promised to deliver theory. If you want to have access to the recording and to the materials of today, You can fill out, GDPR and such. Please fill out that form under careerangels.eu/series of webinars, where you can have access. It doesn't matter if you join all of them, one of them, you can have access to all of them. Just fill out that form and let us know what it is that you'd like. And if now, when we start the Q&A session, if there's something you don't feel comfortable asking in public, feel free to get in touch with us for a free consultation to discuss whatever's relevant for you in the context of today's webinar and the topic of career management and engagement and everything we've been discussing. So I think now is a good moment to start the Q&A, if there is Q&A. Let's see what kind of questions you have.
Exactly. There is Q&A.
There is Q&A. Let me just switch that to here. So while we're waiting for the questions from the audience. Okay. So what do you think, while the audience is typing up their questions, what do you think will happen after the Great Resignation? What's going to happen in 5 to 10 years?
Well, we will be much more diverse. We have to be more diverse to both match the requirements, and it can't be slow diverse. We need to have fast diversity. That's a challenge to deal with as an organization. It's a challenge to deal with as an individual. You have to market your diversity, as well as organizations need to be receptive to diversity.
Companies can't afford to not be not diverse.
No, we have learned so much about diversity that it's the bad managers who think that, if you got a dog or a cat during the pandemic and now you have to go back to office, that's your problem. We have those cases in Sweden, and then they get very bad publicity as bad managers because we're certainly not going to settle for 100% at one working place. Some people would like to have 100% at home. Others would like to have 50-50. Others like to oscillate. There is the challenge is, how can we manage this diversity in some kind of efficient manner? You need to have both flexibility and efficiency at the same time.
Here we've got a question from Kasia Shumigai. From your perspective, what international organization business does a good job on career management/engagement? I think that's a question for you, Rikard.
Well, we've been working with some of the big ones like Volvo, IKEA, and H&M, and they have not gotten that big by being very poor at career management and engagement. They, at the same time, they know that they can do better. IKEA has been quite good at looking at non-monetary rewards, which is more challenging because it's easier to just try to pay them, but in recessions or in certain industries or certain countries, there isn't much room to use monetary rewards. Mm-hmm. So you even have two salary dialogues, where the first dialogue is to reduce the expectations. That's not very engaging. So if you instead try to look at what kind of development, what kind of opportunities for different tasks, for different teams, for different jobs inside of the organization, or even if you leave organization, you can have retained contacts and people come back to good employers over time. So with new learnings that somebody else have paid for. I think that there is no one who has all the solutions, and we have to arrive at new solutions that match new challenges all the time. So it's not that I would say that there's a perfect career management thing, but organizations do differ in terms of retention. They do differ in terms of engagement, and we can actually talk a little bit more about that in the next webinar.
I think that's a good idea. Let's do that. It seems that there are no more questions, which is okay.
The cat here.
That's a cat. The cat wants to join. I have the feeling that we will receive lots of emails and LinkedIn message requests to answer the other questions that haven't been asked publicly. And I think our audience also knows that we'll be talking about their questions in the second and third webinar coming up in April and May. So, Rikard, thank you so much for doing this collaborative webinar series with us. It's always a pleasure to work with you.
For arranging it. It's been a joy. It's seen the international power of career angels on the LinkedIn is fascinating. So I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Me too. Thank you so much, and for everybody watching, thank you very much for sharing your lunchtime with us, and see you hopefully in April. Have a good week, everyone.
Good week. Thank you.
Bye.